Well, the African National Congress is convening a media briefing to announce official nomination processes and rules towards the 55th National Conference. The conference is due to take place from the 16th of December. Let's take you live to the briefing.
Of the cruelty and operation. Her indomitable spirit is a reflection of the innate and most humane yearning to be free. She remains an embodiment of our highest ideals and inspiration to all South Africans. We lower our revolutionary banners in honor of Mam Rita Dzanga and convey our heartfelt condolences to her family, friends and comrades. A fight for the liberation of our people will never go unnoticed. For as long as we live, Mam Rita Dzanga's spirit shall live on. Hamba kahle Mbokodo. Felt that we must just start by conveying this and hand over to Mkhuluwa. He will also just give his personal account as he goes into the presentation on the Electoral Committee. Over to Mkhuluwa.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, we can do it from here, Mkhuluwa.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Kule. Good morning, members of the Fourth Estate. Let me also start off by conveying heartfelt condolences to the family of Mam Rita Dzanga. Incidentally, Mam Rita on the 7th of this month, accompanied by Aunt Sophie de Bruyn, went to the grave of Lillian Goy and Helen Joseph, who are buried in the same grave, actually. And in that cemetery, in paying homage to Lillian Goy and Helen Joseph, Mama Rita said she will be joining them very soon. This is like on the 7th of this month. So, in a sense, she had a premonition that she was about to depart from this world, and we remember very fondly her contribution in the struggle, together with her late husband, Comrade Lawrence Nzanga, who was one of those victims of the apartheid special branch of the police force, because he was detained at John Foster Square and died at the hands of the interrogators at John Foster Square in 1977. So her departure, is to be marked by the ambivalence which comes with celebrating a life well lived, and at the same time mourning the departure. In a word, let me also just convey our condolences. This is a great loss to South Africa, and especially to the younger generation of female activists and professionals, because these stalwarts are a source of great inspiration and could share very deep insights in terms of understanding where we come from and the tools that we need to achieve a better and humanely managed country and world. Yeah. So, Ule and members of the media, let me then come back to our briefing with regards to the rules that are going to apply to the processes leading up to the 55th elective national conference of the African National Congress. The NEC set up the Electoral Committee in terms of the 54th National Conference resolution so the remit of the Electoral Committee is to make rules and to manage selection of candidates for ANC public representatives and leadership. So these rules were approved by the National Executive Committee in its meeting in July last month. They are now to be operationalized, and of course all the other processes of regional and provincial conferences were conducted outside of these rules. Some of these rules, of course, are rules that have always been applied in terms of ANC conferences. But the idea of the National Executive Committee was that once it adopts these rules, it should start with how the National Elective Conference is conducted. And the Electoral Committee was given that responsibility. The resolutions of conference were aimed at addressing weaknesses and manipulation of selection processes, and to come up with rules for campaigning within the ANC, and to deliver candidates and leaders with capacity, integrity, and support that is needed to lead the ANC and government. The Electoral Committee itself does not select leaders or candidates. Its role is that of rule maker and referee. So the rules are now made and adopted, and the remit of the Electoral Committee is to ensure that all the processes are conducted in accordance with these rules. Election itself is run by an independent agency, and that agency has already been selected and approved. It's called elections. So the agency will conduct all the processes, and the agency is accountable to the Electoral Committee, and the Electoral Committee, should there be disputes, the Electoral Committee will then attend to those disputes and resolve them. As you know, the nominations in the ANC are the province of branches. That is why delegates to an elective conference are mainly delegates from branches. In fact, 90% of voting delegates at any conference of the ANC must be delegates from branches. So once they've nominated, the collation of all those nominations would be, the responsibility of the Electoral Committee to then collate and tally all the nominations. So for the positions of officials, that is President, Deputy President, National Chair, Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, Treasurer General, would then the top three for each one of those positions would then go onto the ballot paper. So there will be 3 for each one of the officials. That is the top ones in accordance with nominations as tallied by the Electoral Committee. And then for the additional members of the National Executive Committee, that is the 80, there will be 200 of them that will go onto the ballot paper. And over and above these ones, these names, at conference itself, there will be an opportunity for delegates to nominate from the floor. And whoever musters 25% of voting delegates would then also be added to the ballot paper. So that's how the ballot paper will be put together. I've dealt with the role and powers of the Electoral Committee. I just want to deal with a preamble that would have to be read out to all the meetings at branch level to ensure that the participants or attendees at those meetings understand the importance of nominating leadership, because leadership selection is very, very important, and branches have to be guided through the eye of the needle criteria, so that they nominate members who basically would constitute the National Executive Committee. So the NEC is important because in between conferences, it's the highest decision-making body and has to see to it that policies of the organization and resolutions of conference are implemented. So the success of the ANC depends, therefore, on the quality of members of the National Executive Committee, and as well as their capacity, because in practice, the NEC will not always act as a body, as a structure, because in between its own meetings, individual members of the National Executive Committee are expected to provide leadership in different instances. And that is why it is important for members to understand that once they nominate and elect members onto the National Executive Committee, they should try to nominate and elect the best that is available. And then, of course, as the public face of the organization, the NEC must reflect the values as well as the non-racial character and non-sexist character, and be representative of what we mean by unity in diversity. It must be representative of South Africans in terms of demographics. And of course, the leadership must also have political capacity, must have a proven track record, and public standing and integrity to lead the ANC, so that when they take public platforms or interact with people at any given instance, they should be true representatives of the values of the ANC. Then, of course, there's the issue of generational mix. So we strive to ensure that at least 25% of the NEC should be made up of young people. The term young is relative because, but the membership of the Youth League is from 18 years to, rather 14 years to 35 years. So, however, someone who's 40 is also relatively young. At least I qualify to say so. Yeah. So there should be, in the NEC, not of the Youth League, but the ANC, there should be that generational mix. And of course, Rule 6 of the ANC Constitution stipulates that at least 50% of the leadership structures of the ANC should be women. And so the nomination as well has to basically, reflect that. And so the NEC must also, as I said, be representative in terms of demographics of the country. Now, nominees must also come from various sectors because if you have only one sector, then you are poorer in terms of perspectives. The strength of the National Executive Committee must be that it is guaranteed of perspectives from all angles. So that is why in terms of class stratification, in terms of geographic layout, all of that must be taken into account when you elect the National Executive Committee, and including marginalized groups, people living with disabilities, the LGBTQI plus community must also be represented in the National Executive Committee. If it is to be a true representative body capable of giving leadership, then it must be as representative as all that. So the rules as approved by the National Executive Committee also ban negative and undemocratic practices that serve factions or promote slates. Those are now, in terms of the rules, banned. And so breaking and undermining these rules may actually result in disciplinary action, and the offenders may either be disqualified if they are nominees or face disciplinary proceedings that may result in suspension or expulsion even. So the part of the rules that deals with who may stand as a candidate for the NEC flow out of the Constitution, because the Constitution of the ANC says any member in good standing who, with 10 years of unbroken service in the ANC, qualifies to be nominated and also to nominate whomsoever. So any member may stand if an active has been active for at least 10 years, then you qualify to stand for nomination onto the National Executive Committee, unless they have been found guilty of or charged with unethical or immoral conduct, any serious crime or corruption, then those ones are disqualified. And a serious crime is one that could result in a prison sentence of longer than 6 months, and a charge defined as being charged in a court of law. The rule applies also to members who have been charged with any criminal offences in cases that are still being heard or where a judgment or sentence is being appealed. Those ones as well are excluded from availing themselves for election. Included in this group are those who have been found guilty by the disciplinary committee of the ANC and have had their membership suspended for any period in the last 10 years. And it also applies to those who are awaiting a decision or appeal. So once you are charged like that, you are disqualified. Rules apply also to members who are temporarily suspended pending the outcome of a court or disciplinary hearing, and to members on whose cases the Integrity Commission of the ANC have completed and submitted a report and recommendation of suspension of membership or stepping aside. Those also are excluded. The Electoral Committee then will use these rules to vet all nominees on short list and exclude those affected. So the vetting by the Electoral Committee will be based on these rules. If you do not meet the criteria of having 10 years of unbroken service, and or you are facing charges and so on, the vetting will exclude you from the list of nominees. Then the ANC Code of Conduct forbids certain actions, and offenders will face disciplinary action. So these are lifted. This section is lifted directly from the constitution of the ANC, but will indicate how these also apply to the processes leading up to the National Elective Conference. And the first one says, failing to obey any rules made in terms of the Constitution, including these very rules, sowing racism, sexism, tribal chauvinism, religious and political intolerance, regionalism, and any other form of discrimination, and that also apply to campaigns of leaders in the organization in terms of these rules. But this is lifted directly from the ANC Constitution. Behavior which can bring ANC into disrepute, that also applies in terms of these rules. Provoking division, impacting negatively on unity, this applies to slates and negative campaigning. So you can't sing derogatory songs against any other nominees and so on. But this is directly from the ANC Constitution. Abusing elected or employed office in ANC or state to get advantage or enrichment. Participating in any organized factional activity that goes beyond normal, recognized, free debate and campaigning. Publishing and or distributing any media publication promoting the view of any organized grouping, faction or tendency within the ANC. Undermining the respect for and or impeding the functioning of any ANC structures. This includes preventing a branch or electoral committee from carrying out their tasks. But as I said, these are lifted directly out of, from the ANC constitution. ANC Code of Conduct forbids certain actions, and offenders must, of that rule, must face disciplinary action. If you misappropriate funds or destroy ANC property, that would get you into serious trouble. If you fight or assault another member, or behaving in a disorderly manner at ANC meetings, disrupting meetings, interfering with the orderly functioning of the ANC, that will get you into serious hot water. Asking for or accepting or paying any bribe for performing or not performing any task in connection with the ANC, this practice like vote selling or buying fall directly under this rule. Prejudicing the integrity or reputation of the organization, its personnel or its operational capacity by impeding the activities of the organization. Creating divisions within its ranks or membership, doing any other act which undermines the ANC's effectiveness as an organization. This rule includes any attempts at cheating or undermining the democratic practices of the ANC. Let me go to the next section. The new rules for campaigning. The Electoral Committee believes campaigning should be allowed within these rules, and all should observe these rules. The Electoral Committee has a mandate from the 54th National Conference to rid the ANC of negative and corrupt practices in leadership selection, vote buying, and promotion of slates specifically. No delegate should vote for leaders they do not know and respect. A short CV will be published for every candidate on the final nomination list, so that each and every member can at least make a choice, from an informed position. Campaigning and lobbying should be an open process where we are all allowed to influence each other and are influenced by others within the rules and structures of the movement. The right to nominate and vote for leadership lies with ANC members, and branches who nominate should have that right of nominating and electing protected against corrupt practices who seek to manipulate and undermine the democratic processes. If you think of it, if you take away the right of members to select and elect their own leaders, you are already, in a sense, engaged in corrupt practices. So delegates get their mandate from branches and must ensure that they act in accordance with that mandate. Of course, once they engage with others, they are there to influence and be influenced. And if they are influenced, when they go back to the branches, they should be able to explain why they felt that they were influenced by superior considerations. So essentially what we're saying is that the mandate that the delegate is given by the branch must always prevail, on the proviso that there's room for influencing others and being influenced. So the rules for campaign events will apply from the time that nominations open on the 7th of September. From the 7th of September, nominations for the Electoral Conference will open. Candidates will be held responsible for preventing actions by supporters and for their campaign teams abiding by these rules. Remember, a leader does not only take responsibility for his or her own actions, they also take responsibility for those that they lead. So no one may manipulate the outcome of nominations and elections by buying support, by paying or offering services, positions, other rewards to branches and delegates for their vote to a particular candidate or candidates. No one may offer or accept such sweeteners. No campaign may quarantine delegates by separating them and keeping them away from other influences. All delegates must stay in conference accommodation with their province or league or region according to the plans of Conference Preparatory Committee. In other words, you can't take a group of delegates and provide them with separate transport and provide them with separate accommodation so that they are not part of the conference. They are quarantined, as it were. We learned this term from COVID. So that is not permissible. No delegates may be given special food, accommodation, transport, or flights unless they are people living with disability. And even in such cases, the provincial or league secretary who takes such a decision would be held accountable for such a decision, and therefore would have to be in a position to justify why that has happened. No one may use branded, that is a candidate's name or face, or campaign abbreviation. You have these abbreviations of factions, or T-shirts or caps, vehicles, pamphlets, posters, or other printed material to promote a candidate or group of candidates. Restrictions apply to all media and advertising that cost money. So here the rule is trying to address this whole issue of people who are members of the ANC but go by different titles. Some of them even try to introduce their own special regalia to distinguish themselves. All of that is not allowed. It's an ANC conference, you must wear ANC regalia, ANC colors. No problem with that. So, media that is available at little or no cost, such as social media, emails, SMS, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and press releases and interviews are allowed. That you can use because you don't. It doesn't cost too much money. It doesn't cost money at all. So, in terms of regalia, only ANC T-shirts are allowed. You can, design them whatever the way you want, but it must be ANC regalia. And then there's a section that deals with organizational and public meetings. So campaigns may hold organizational or public meetings, interviews, debates, in person or virtually, and or on radio, television or social media. Costs may be paid for venue, sound, travel for organizers and candidates. Modest refreshments may be served. In other words, water, not no alcohol, no drugs or psychoactive substances are permissible. ANC structures may host organizational meetings where candidates can address members as long as all candidates are given such access in provinces. So in a province you can't only give such an organizational platform to a select a group of nominees to the exclusion of others. It has to be all of them. The Electoral Committee may approve or call debates between opposing candidates on ANC platforms to provide better information to members. The Electoral Committee will have to decide the rules and format of such debates. Mass and public media platforms may be used as long as the rules, format, and moderation are controlled by the Electoral Committee. These events should not become disorderly spectacles. No member or candidate may use any form of negative campaigning against another candidate or group of candidates. Focus should be on why support is deserved by whoever you are campaigning for. No group of NEC candidates may campaign as an organized slate or list. Candidates may express support for each other and attend campaign events together. No one may distribute lists or slates of officials and NEC members that delegates should vote for. Then consequences and objections. Members may report any infringement of these rules to the Electoral Committee or whistleblowing center that will be active from the beginning of nominations. So a center will be established, so that members who feel aggrieved by one form or other of misconduct may then report. The Electoral Committee may refer the matter to an ANC disciplinary committee, and it could lead to the disqualification of the nominee in question. Any member involved in the prohibited activities in the sections above may be suspended or expelled following a disciplinary process. Any candidate whose campaign supporters participate in such activities must condemn the actions of supporters and may be disqualified if he or she does not make a strong enough effort to end this kind of behavior. All candidates must agree to abide by these rules and to keep a clear record of all sources of donations in money or in kind and all spending on their campaign. The full financial record of every campaign must be submitted to the Electoral Committee. The Electoral Committee has the right to demand further particulars and to inspect bank statements of candidates' campaigns and campaign workers and to interview campaign organizers. The Electoral Committee may order a full disclosure of all assets, properties, investments, donations, and gifts of any member involved. This will require the full cooperation of the nominee. The Electoral Committee may also open a criminal or civil case where such is warranted. All objections against candidates' eligibility must reach the Electoral Committee by the 15th of October. And of course, each one of such objections must provide the conduct details of the objector, contact details of the objector, the name of the candidate, the grounds for objection, and any available evidence. The Electoral Committee will contact the candidate involved and give opportunity for a response. If needed, the Electoral Committee will investigate further, or a hearing will be held. The ruling of the Electoral Committee will be final and will be communicated to both objector and candidate. All objections against campaign methods and use of resources may be made at any time until voting is concluded. From early August, a special whistleblowing site will be set up for those who wish to object but remain anonymous. Members should use this site carefully and avoid unfounded allegations. The Electoral Committee may censure or disqualify the candidates or refer them to the ANC disciplinary committee. Then, of course, the last part deals with our timelines. So the cut-off date for membership for conference is the 3rd of September. That is, if, new members are recruited, that's the cut-off date. From that, if you are recruited after that date, then you would not be counted as part of the membership of the ANC. And nominations, as I said, will commence from the 7th of September. Thereafter, the dates deal with the training that the Electoral Committee will have to offer and conduct to the members and other committees and relevant leaders in the structures of the organization. And of course, names, the disputes and complaints, as stated before, where the Electoral Committee will rule by the 31st of October, so that names of final candidates for branches will be circulated as of the 1st of November, so that with the CVs, brief CVs attached, so that members, when they brief their delegates to conference, should do so from an informed position. So, Comrade Pule and members of the media, that's the salient points of the rules. I'm sure you've been furnished with the rules in full, and so if there's any clarity-seeking questions, we are here to